Hello, 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 beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the Career Gems for the Journey podcast. We are recording live on video, so you're going to be able to see this on YouTube and get it on audio. So this is a little bit of enhancement. We're taking it up a notch and making sure that we continue to make this experience as rich and as worthwhile as possible, and that we can find you wherever you are, whether you're on podcast platforms, on iTunes, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to get access to the Career Gems for the Journey podcast. And we are excited today because we have an amazing guest, as you can see. We're going to welcome Erica Castro-Morrison to the podcast. Welcome, Erica.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, all right. So we're going to go and give a little bit of a disclaimer, right? We're going to warm this up. Erica and I are friends in real life. So this podcast is going to take us a couple of different directions because there's all kinds of interwoven, personal connections and stories, but there's a lot on the professional side too. And I'm going to give Erica a chance to just tell us a little bit about her professional backstory because that'll help you to understand why we're doing this podcast now, because not only is it super timely and it is completely aligned to the work that we're doing at Career Gems for the Journey, but Erica and I get to work together at Career Gems for the Journey. So the layers of it are pretty deep, and it's phenomenal because you get to work with people that you actually like, and we get to do stuff that we find interesting. So we feel fortunate to be able to use the platform for this purpose, but I want you guys to get a sense of who Erica is. So Erica, tell the people just a little bit about your professional backstory. Go as far as you like into your own educational experience and professional experience, and then I'll give the audience a perspective of what we're doing now together.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was a great introduction. So again, my name is Erica Castro-Morrison. So I have a little bit of a roller coaster of a background. I originally started out as a computer-aided designer. I used to do drafting for the government in a contractor capacity. I used to do electrical schematics, HVAC schematics for General Dynamics and Bath Iron Works as a contractor for naval submarines. I did that for quite so many years and decided that I was going to go ahead and do that for the rest of my life, I thought at the time. But, things happened. I had to have some medical surgeries and decided that I needed to find something a little bit more relaxing. From there, I decided, you know what, I want to be a makeup artist. And then I pivoted and did makeup and waxing, and I was an esthetician for a little bit. And then my heart was calling me that I really missed them. I really missed technology. I really missed the challenge that came from it, and decided that I needed to go back to school, learn some more things, get some more education. And so I went to Norfolk State University, my alma mater.
Yeah. Shout out to Norfolk State. Shout out to HBCUs.
Behold the green and gold. Behold the green and gold. And from there, I went and got my bachelor's and my master's in computer science and a concentration in information assurance, which is cybersecurity. From there, I ended up working for the government yet again, but this time as a federal employee. I worked for NAB Air, which is located on the West Coast in California. Worked there for some years as a cybersecurity analyst, as ISO, and worked on systems, classified systems there for almost 5 years. And then it wasn't until last year that I decided that I needed to do another pivot. I had a feeling that, the work from home environment was changing, and I really needed to have something that would allow me to have my own flexible schedule, allow me to be able to, take care of my needs without having to have such a rigid, 9 to 5, 8 to 4 type thing. And so I decided that I wanted to create my own business. And then from there, I started STEM Roots Collective and decided to collaborate with friends of mine. And I've been doing organizational management and AI tool solutions for startup companies. I specifically target minority startup companies who have a hard time finding resources, and explain to them and show them ways that they can use AI tools to get their business up and going, to get them on the right path, and to help them excel and meet their goals.
So let's
Um,
wait. Okay.
okay,
All
we're
right.
about to,
Slow it down.
okay.
Okay. So it was absolutely necessary for folks to hear not only that you have a deep expertise in degrees in cybersecurity as it relates to artificial intelligence now, but that you like lived a full rich life. This kind of idea that there's no one way to be successful. There's no one career path that may satisfy you in each age and stage and experience of your own life, and that your career really should match your life. And I think you're a great example of someone who has allowed their career to evolve in order to meet their lifestyle needs. And that doesn't mean that it has been without change, right? And it hasn't been without friction and kind of tension. So I love the idea that you started in one place and then decided you wanted to go to a completely different, very much opposite end of the spectrum, and going into being an esthetician, which I actually found completely inspiring, right, at the time that you did it, because it was so counterculture. And then the idea that, okay, well, I'm ready to make another pivot, and how do I do that? And to use education as a way to reintroduce yourself into a different industry. Absolutely love that. So wanted to make sure we captured all of that. But then when you think about Erica from 20-year-old Erica and what she would have desired, what does she want for her own life and career? And I knew 20-year-old Erica, so I'm really curious as to what your answer is going to be. What did 20-year-old Erica think she wanted to do with her life professionally? And then how does that align to the work that you get to do today?
So 20-year-old Erica coming out of Central High School. I was in community college at the time, and I wanted to be in the Air Force so bad. I wanted to go into the Air Force, and
I
I wanted
remember
to
that.
wear the uniform. I wanted to, do the whole experience where you travel the world and, have different experiences, and I could go to school for free. So these were all things that I really wanted to do at that time. At the time, I was still unsure of like what I wanted my studies to be in. I think I was leaning towards like architecture and civil engineering a little bit at that time because my aunt was an architect and she was like a big influence in my life at the time. But it wasn't like necessarily something that was like in the Air Force that you could actually learn. You know what I mean? Like a
Mm-hmm.
job per se. They had civil engineering, but it was a little bit differently. And then I learned computer aided design and then decided like from there, like, okay, this is a way I can do some type of architecture, building, civil engineering, and it could align to that. Unfortunately, I had a medical condition that just what do you call it? Disallowed me from being into the military. And so I had to
Mm-hmm.
pivot and do something different. But 20 years later, I still ended up working for the government in some capacity, in the military for
Yeah.
some capacity. It all worked out.
Isn't that amazing that like the path was meandering and it might not have been direct, but like your own vision for yourself still allowed you to accomplish that, the goal that 20-year-old you would have set? Oh, that's heartwarming, because there's somebody who's out there now thinking, oh, there's only one way to be successful, right? There's only one way to get there. And, they may be navigating friction or adversity or frustrations and feeling like I'm not going to be able to get to the destination that I desired. And I think you're a great example of like, okay, well, then let me take a detour, and then I'm going to take a break on the detour. I'm going to take a rest, to stop, and then I'm going to come back on the road, because you've always been someone who is a problem solver and always been someone who is, pretty self-motivated and determined. So I love to hear that, 20-year-old you had that vision. I remember thinking about when when we started um when we started in high school, because we obviously have known each other, not obviously, we'll give the audience that understanding, we've known each other since high school, right? So that's a very, very long time. And I think that my path was very linear, and it was very much, what the paper said. The paper said to do this, and I did that. Like, okay, yes, I will do that. I was very much a conformist at that stage. So I was always inspired by your non-conforming, or adaptive, I should say, way to be able to make yeah, like, okay, well, we'll do that. That's fine. I'll figure that out. That didn't work exactly the way I wanted to. So let's transition there. So all right. So now you're a computer scientist, right? You go into
Yeah.
computer science, and you mentioned that the work from home environment in the government was eroding, and it wasn't something that you saw being able to sustain and meet your needs as you went forward. So now you go in and you create STEM roots. And STEM Roots is an organization that not only founded, but you're building a nonprofit arm for, really trying to have this very well-rounded, kind of robust approach to what needs small businesses or businesses may have, and how you can solve them with your skill set. And then you brought on artificial intelligence as another layer to that. So tell me how you even made the entrance into, or to transition, I should say, from a pretty traditional computer scientist, with cyber security expertise, into focusing deeper on artificial intelligence, specifically some of the large language models that we navigate now.
It was actually just gradual. When I was in the government, ChatGPT, I would say like maybe 2, 3 years ago, ChatGPT was just like starting to make its like coming out, and the government was researching like what were ways that we could integrate it safely, and be able to utilize some of the tool sets and language models that they had, to like help with our work capacity and to help with, just everyday mundane things that take people so much time but are not necessarily sensitive or necessarily something that's very hard to do, like having like lists that need to be organized, data sets that need to be organized, so on and so on. And so I started taking classes that they offered about language models and different ways that we could use it, different ways that you could see that it could effectively just change your output that you were doing during your workday. And then from there, I started using it in my personal life. So I started saying like, okay, can I use this for my budget? All right. Can I use this to like start changing my performance review, because I hate doing performance reviews and I need to figure out like how can I make it match this language that I need to do so my performance review is better. Then I was like, okay, well, what else can I do with this? Then I had a friend who needed a resume, and I was like, oh, I can probably help you do this with the resume with the AI. And so little by little, I started chipping away at what AI could do, what the different programs could do. I found a program that was like a note taker, and then that like changed my life. That was like revolutionary for me,
Yeah.
because I hate taking notes, but it's like, something completely necessary that you need.
Yeah.
And so I was able to find that, and then that's like a very integral part of my life right now. I would not be able to function without it. It helps me with my tasking. It helps me to email my clients. It helps me keep track of my calendar. It's just an all encompassing thing that 2 years ago, if you told me that that was something I was going to be using every single day, I'd be like, you're silly. There's no way. That doesn't make any sense.
And you actually mentioned like how your career was driven by, meeting your own medical needs and trying to make sure that you worked for organizations that allowed the flexibility necessary. But it also kind of speaks to how artificial intelligence enables you to navigate through, some of the things that might have otherwise been like a derailer, right? When we get to learn our own needs and how we can incorporate artificial intelligence to support our needs, right? You talked about it as a note taker tool. And I think that those kinds of small nuances can be such an amazing hack, especially for folks who are either, neurodivergent, or folks who have a hard time with processing information kind of real time. And this idea of, okay, I need to go back and read it or go back and review it, or I needed to be able to play me a voice note. And I think that those are small hacks that artificial intelligence can really have an impact in our actual lives. And sometimes it is just to make our life easier. It's not necessarily about work productivity alone, but just to make your life easier. A lot of us find ourselves forced into tasks that are kind of just the requirements of the job. And now I've noticed, just in my own use and in, some of the examples that you've explained, that there are, deeper and richer that just makes your life function better, that artificial intelligence can make a huge impact for. So, all right, so now you're in the government. You're like, okay, let me extract all this value. Y'all have you have trainings, you have development opportunities, and then you start playing around. Right now, you start actually using it in the environment. And you mentioned earlier that you started your career as a CAD designer, and maybe folks don't really know what CAD is. You and I do, obviously, because we can nerd out on these things. But I wanted to just give the audience a little bit more context of what AutoCAD as a not necessarily as a software, but what is a CAD designer? Because I think it's relevant as we think about people like you who are early adopters to certain like tools or technologies, or just this idea that puzzle solving is kind of a part of what CAD designers are doing. So just tell us like what that was, what that role was for you, and then we're going to jump into how that impacts an AI brain.
Sure. So originally, I was doing CAD design for surveyors and landscapers. So like when you have your home and say like you own 10 acres of land and you have 5 kids, so you want to subdivide it into 2 acres for each kid. A surveyor would go out there, they would take their measurements, they would get the yardage, all that stuff. They would put it on a little piece of napkin or paper or whatever, and then they would take it back to me. I would take that information, I would create a document and a blueprint. That blueprint would go to the city, and then it would become a formalized document of what your land was, what the measurements of your land was, who it was subdivided to, so that your children or your family could use that later on. Another way that I used the computer-aided design was, again, for doing HVAC and electrical systems for the military, like I said before. So we would take schematics of electrical components. So say there was like a
Say a fan. You need a
fan,
blower
right.
fan. Keep it
You
real
need a
simple.
blower fan or something like
Yeah.
that. I would actually just design what the fan was supposed to look like. I would have the dimensions of everything and then what components went in or out. We had to label it, that type of thing. And then they would go to the metal shop, and then the metal shop would use that as the basis of how to actually build it from scratch. And so
Yeah.
those are the things that we did with computer-aided design. And back then, even though we didn't have AI, there were automatic tools that help to assist that. And to me, those are like the early beginnings of like what AI was.
So that's thank you so much for saying that, because I believe that there were all kinds of early indicators of where AI type tools or predictive modeling were being used in technical careers. So I feel like for you and I, it was like, oh, I could tell that there were, kind of rumblings, or there would be little sparks where you would see things happening and it would affect, the day to day, the way that we did work. But we took it as this is just, a part of a technological improvement, and it would be an investment, right, that may be worthwhile, and maybe it did make our job a little bit easier. And I thought CAD was a great example of that, because there was a time where, and we're going to go back to like really old school traditional engineering, where we were using graph paper, and you would
Right.
draw an item and you would draw it physically to scale. And scale means if it was 1 foot, I would use 1 inch on a piece of paper to represent 1 foot. And now
Right.
you're constantly doing calculations, right, to make sure that that scale correlation is happening. And then you get CAD, and CAD is like, okay, we can skip all of this graph paper situation, or maybe not skip it, but we can digitize it, right? We make what was a hard copy exercise into a digital tool, and then that tool can be distributed, and then you use it to draw your fan, right? Or you use it to build somebody's air conditioning system in their home or in the building that you're talking about for the military. So just really walking us through this concept of there are instances of these technology advancements and improvements that are happening kind of behind the scenes in a traditional engineering or CAD or designing environment. And now we see it explode, and it explodes onto the scene. And it's alongside, because I think that there is a lot of hype that is that creates fear and kind of trepidation for people around these tools. And the reason why I wanted you to tell the backstory is how you've seen it evolve. Is it's been kind of playing a more dormant role in our technology, and now it's just a more out front, right, out in the open. And I want people to be able to feel the shift and kind of acknowledge how much AI and artificial intelligence is impacting the way we do work now. But it isn't this thing that was like magic that just came out of nowhere. This has been an evolution over time. And so just talk to me just a little bit about, in your mind, and this is our opinions, right? Our POVs as people who spent a lot of time in a technology space, and then also now people who believe that human intelligence is still exceeds the idea of artificial intelligence. So I'll tell you guys my bias. I think that human intelligence aligned with artificial intelligence is really where the transformation can happen. I sincerely believe that as we think about leveraging technology, it always comes down to how are we doing it safely? How are we doing it in a way that's equitable? And how are we doing it in a way that's secure for the people who are using it? And that comes down to any part, right? Any part of the internet, any app that we use, any, software. So artificial intelligence, I put it in those similar categories. Now, I did alongside because there's so much hype, there's so much fear mongering, there's so much, um, I think, misinformation or so much over exaggeration around artificial intelligence because it is, for right now, the backbone of the US economy. So that's my opinion. I think because it's really the backbone of the US economy from a stock market and from a startup and from a venture capital standpoint, there's just a lot more buzzwords and discussions and and news articles and social media posts and YouTube video, all of the things. And I think that's getting overwhelming for people in a way. So I was really glad that we had a chance to have this opportunity because I think we can put it in some plainer language and we can just turn down the fear, turn down the trepidation and concern about what impacts AI is going to have on the workplace. But we're not denying that it will have an impact, right? We're not in any way saying that there won't be an impact to the way that we work. I think the how is important for us to kind of walk into. So let's start off with the biggest misconceptions around AI. Help us hear your perspective on what are the current biggest misconceptions in this noisy AI is everywhere environment.
So even before we do that, I want to touch on one thing that you said, which was like the fear of AI. I want to go back, like this is really dating ourselves right here, but do you remember when we used typewriters?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, not typewriters, word processors, please.
Word processors.
Put some respect on it. Yes, I do.
Do you remember this? This was like, that was our lives. You had to go back, you had to white out, it was like a whole thing. And then computers came out and then they had Word doc. And people were like so scared to go from a typewriter, which they could manually be able to do every little thing. And people were like, what is this on these things? They knew how to type without having to use whiteout. Like they were like gurus. And then now they have to learn a whole new process, a whole new system, a whole new technology.
Interesting.
Scared that they were going to lose their jobs, right?
Yeah. And to be honest, some did, right? This idea of being able to type, 35, 75 words a minute and being, highly efficient in typewriters or being able to dictate notes or what is it called when they like type real time as they're talking?
Oh, it's like what they do in the court, right?
Yes, like the stenographers. Yeah, those stenographers are the ones that do it. But there's a certain term for it, and it'll come to me in a second because it's something that my grandmother actually did, right? Like she was a live note taker for a large corporation. So it's a real thing, right? But I love the analogy because it speaks to this idea that every time there is a significant improvement or a shift in technology, there's going to be an impact to industry. And it's how it gets applied is where the rubber really meets the road. So the technology in this situation has become scarier because I think it removes some of the human elements that we are just feeling very uncomfortable with. And I think it comes down to who owns this technology, who's developing it, and what are the avenues that it could be used for. Because I think you gave a lot of great examples of how it could be very helpful, but we also know that it can be used to be damaging. And there's lots of bias that can be baked into it. And we're going to get into that. But talk to me just a little about, in your mind, where are the misconceptions?
Right. So one of the misconceptions is that AI is always correct. That's not true. Okay. AI makes mistakes because it is a program written by people. So unfortunately, there's going to be some error, some error or whatever that you have to do. So you always have to check your work. It's just like having an intern, right? Your intern may be able to do a good draft on, email or something like that, but it's still an intern who needs to have direction and guidance. So you still need to check and make sure that this person's on the right path. Think of the AI as like an intern. That's how my best way of making people understand. It doesn't write perfectly. It's not just for tech people. My grandma is using ChatGPT right now. Okay. My grandma is 4 years old and she is doing it. All right. If my grandma can do it, there's no problem. All you people can do it. I have a son who is autistic. He uses it in everyday life. It helps to improve his life. These are people who are not the typical what we think person would be who would be using artificial intelligence, but
they weren't the intended use case, right? They weren't the intended use case. It wasn't designed with them in mind.
Right. So you're not too old to learn. Just because you have a disability does not mean that you cannot understand what's going on. It's not going to replace you. You have to think of AI as a tool set that you utilize. It is not itself by itself going to replace you, but someone who is using AI may replace you. So that is the difference, you
Yeah.
know? So you want to make sure that you understand that it's still just a program, just like a word processor, just like that replaced the typewriter. It's just a program. Think of it of that way. It is not something that is this almighty powerful thing that is like we can't do without. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I love that you said that AI is not always right. I feel like that's the foundation that we have to start the conversation on. We cannot default our critical thinking as humans and allow artificial intelligence to replace our ability to critically think. We have to use it as a tool in concert with our own judgment, with our own sense of nuance, and our own common sense. And AI can do none of those things, right? AI is a process, it is a program. And talk about what large language models are for a little bit. Because I think when you mentioned ChatGPT and that being new, when you were still working in the government and emerging, there are a couple of them, right? There's ChatGPT, there's Claude, there's
Mhm.
Gemini, there's Copilot, right? Those are probably the ones that people are most familiar with. But what are they actually doing? What are these large language models actually doing when you type in a prompt? I type in a prompt that says, show me 20 restaurants in this neighborhood. What's actually happening in the background?
So it's just an algorithm, and an algorithm is just a math equation, right? And so they're taking math and they're taking the input that it's getting from the internet, from books, from people putting information into it, and it's a big data center that takes all this information, condenses it down, and rifles through it quicker than we could do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So imagine it's like having Google on speed. You put in your prompt, it takes that information, it breaks it down into different ways that it can make it better. It breaks it down into how it can get the information quicker, and then it gives you the best prompt that it can at the time based on the it gives you the best information based on the prompt that you gave it, right? Depending on what the prompt is that you gave it depends on the information that you get back from it, and that's also another really important thing that you need to understand.
Yeah.
um Yes,
the
sorry.
the prompting as it goes, so it reminds us of, and we've heard this in we hear this in technology and engineering all the time, garbage in, garbage out. So
Right.
if your prompt is a lower quality prompt that you're putting
Mhm.
into the large language model, as it goes and scrapes the internet, it's going to scrape the internet and maybe go the wrong direction, right?
Correct.
But if as
So
you
asking
it may go
vague
the wrong
questions,
direction. Would you
right?
say?
If you're asking vague questions, if you're asking the wrong question, say you're saying you want 20 restaurants, right? But you didn't say what city.
Yep. I didn't say what
Okay.
city.
You
I
didn't
didn't
say
say
what
what
city,
type of food, right?
right?
I
You
didn't say
didn't
breakfast,
say
lunch, or dinner,
if it's child friendly. You didn't
right?
ask any of these pertinent questions that you would need to do. So it just went on Yelp, grabbed 20 random, different restaurants. It was like, here you go.
Hmm.
This is one is in Dubai. This one is in La
Yeah.
Paz. This one is in Chicago.
Yeah. And technically it's correct, right? It
Right.
did what you asked it to do, but because me as the user didn't properly
Format
architect
the
or
question.
design that prompt, then it's going to give me back something that may not actually be useful. So
Right.
then it puts us in a position to talk a little bit more, and I'd like to like pull this thread further with you. When you are trying to learn how to leverage artificial intelligence, and we're going to get into this because we have collaborated on a workshop with Career Gems for the Journey. You and STEM Roots have been able to bring your expertise where we were able to build a practical AI workshop, right? So we give ourselves an opportunity for community and folks who are listening to this podcast, for those who are members of the Career Gems for the Journey community, and those who can have access to the internet can learn AI prompting tools and techniques via this workshop. So now, using the example of give me a list of 20 restaurants, right? Let's just talk a little bit more about how you built this workshop so that it allows people who are novice, right? Who don't know anything about prompting. They don't know what prompts are. They feel like prompt engineering sounds like a full-time degree that they need to go and get. But tell us how this workshop kind of builds a fundamental understanding of these large language models, whichever one you choose, because none of them have partnered with us yet. None of them are paying us to mention their name again. So we're gonna we're not shouting out, any one or the other, but I wanted to make sure that folks feel like as they're thinking about, should I start to try to learn artificial intelligence now? My answer is absolutely yes. It's never too late and you're not behind, right? So talk about the workshop that you have helped to architect and to build, and how someone who may be a novice and approaching artificial intelligence should think about what they're going to learn, what they're going to get from this workshop experience.
Sure. So one of the basic things that we really help you to understand is that prompting is a framework, right? We break it down into different parts of the framework, which is like, what is the task? What is the history and the context of it? What are the inputs and the references and the sources that you need to make it better? Then we talk about iteration, right? A prompt that you do one time is not going to give you the best information the first time. You need to iterate always so that you can get the correct outcome that you're looking for. And then the knowledge library, which is how do we save these prompts that we have so that we're working more efficiently and that we can do our work better. Having just some information about the framework and breaking it down that way just helps people get a better understanding and realize that it's actually quite simple once you have the steps of what you need to do. You just use the same steps over and over again to help get to what you need to do. You need to summarize an email. You need to find 20 restaurants. So you can say, okay, I need to find 20 restaurants. It's for a family reunion. Okay. There's going to be 50 people. It's going to be in Chicago. I need it to be a Black-owned facility. Then you get what you get, and then you're like, okay, well, I want something that was like, in BT or like something like that, or Jet Magazine. That's like a Black recognized magazine or something that had publicity or something. You know what I mean? And then you can say like, okay, my next iteration could be like, oh, I also want it to be able to be catered. Like, can they cater it? And I want the price point to be this price point. You just keep iterating until you get to the prompt that you want. And then if this is something that you're going to be using every year, maybe you do a reunion every year. You save this prompt in your knowledge library so that you have it. So next year you don't have to go through this all over again. You'll just copy it, paste it, and then you'll get the information for what you need for the next year. And the same thing goes to for working for business. If you are an executive assistant and you have to take notes, if you have to get summaries, if you have to give something to your boss, creating these prompt libraries to help you summarize, to help you write better emails, to talk to C-suite employee executives, all of that is stuff that can be done efficiently and utilized and saved so that you can keep doing your job even better.
So what you've just explained is, one, there are certain levels of context that are necessary for the novice user who is navigating these platforms to get to the point where they can provide the context necessary so that the output that they get gets better and better. It gets closer and closer to a version of something that they'll be able to use. So using the example of the restaurant, giving more context to the location and other variables that are going to make a difference in what parts of the internet or what parts of data sets that the large language models are going to go and find helps it to improve your process. So if you're a novice and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this sounds like something that, I'm not equipped for, it starts with, one, asking a question or soliciting some kind of information. Then as you get that response back, Erica explained around iterations, and that iteration is just the way you would dialogue maybe with a person who doesn't know anything about Chicago or doesn't know anything about what you're trying to attempt to do as far as finding this restaurant. And they would continue to maybe prompt you and ask you more questions for clarifying information. So what we're
Right.
doing in the workshop is teaching you how to design and write prompts so that you're providing appropriate levels of clarifying information. And then also, get a little bit spicy, we can say we need a source, right? Because we said that artificial intelligence is not correct and it's scraping the internet. God forbid we assume everything that's on the internet is accurate. So, knowing that those inaccuracies exist, we want to make sure that you continue to require the platform that you're using to tell you what's the source for this information so that you can go and fact check that for yourself, or so that you have that point of reference. So it gives you really an entry level understanding for those who are novice, how to start to prompt these large language models and these AI tools so that you get better and better outputs. And then it pushes you a little bit further. Once you understand how to prompt, then you want to, there's prompt chaining where you're doing you're asking for multiple different things in the same prompt. And then that makes it more complex. Your responses may be more dynamic, but then it also gives you a chance to continue to iterate, right? And edit with that once you get an output. So it can be a really, really good ideation platform, especially if you're, give us, you mentioned before, and we've talked about this offline. So now I'm blending in conversations as we're building the workshop. This example of, something that you love to use as your prompting AI. So give me an example of what your favorite type of prompt is as you're thinking about how do I make sure that I am being very thoughtful in where the limitations of the software or what the platform is. How do I make sure that I'm prompting it appropriately? So give us a couple examples of something that you like to use in your prompting.
So that's a really good question. One of the things that I always put in my prompts is at the end of it, I go, ask me clarifying questions about this prompt before you finish your thinking. And so I always ask the AI to do that, because then the AI will prompt you with questions that you didn't think of or things that you're missing. And then it helps to make your prompt even better. So that's one of my things that I do a lot is like, hey, ask me 3 to 5 clarifying questions that I could be missing that are relevant to this, that can help me with this.
Because it also reveals the assumptions that the large language models are going to make. And we know that there are assumptions, which kind of leads me a little bit into bias. So talk just a little bit about the bias that we know exists and how we can navigate that, or how we can, kind of go in with our eyes wide open as we use these large language models. And we're going to go deeper into this into the workshop, right? We're just giving you guys a taste of the perspective, because I think the part that Erica kind of doesn't really acknowledge, she kind of doesn't toot her own horn about, is she also is very much in-depth expertise in cybersecurity. So I think understanding that there is naturally risk that goes into using these tools, and we want to make sure that you're de-risking the information that you're putting into these large language models, but still making good use of the tool. So talk to us just a little bit about what it looks like as you're thinking about how do we de-risk the information that's going in, but how do we acknowledge the bias that we know exists in these large language models so that we can navigate as seamlessly and as risk mitigated as we possibly can. Help us to understand that a little bit better.
So one of the biases that I think people don't realize that happens with the AI is the AI seems to always want to make you happy, which seems like a weird thing, but it always wants to. So say you're saying, I need to make 20 muffins. I only have eggs, milk. I don't have any sugar. I don't have any flour. Da, 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 da. The AI will be like, you know what? It's okay. We can figure this out. And the AI will say, show me give me a picture of what you have in your cabinet. You give it a picture and it's like, you know what? We can take bananas and da, 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 and we can make this work. But that's not what you want, right? You want to make traditional muffins. It's trying to make you feel better about your situation instead of being factual all the time. And I found that that's really interesting.
Why does it do that? Why do you know, or can you tell us why? Because I have my own theories too.
My theory is that they want the AI to not be as machine-like and unpersonal to you.
Mm-hmm.
So they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to personalize it to you to make you feel like, okay, this is something that is not derogatory, is not something that could be bad or harmful or anything like
Yeah.
that. So
It's
it's
not
trying to make
judgy.
it personable to
Yeah.
you. And to me, it's really interesting, but it's also to me one of the most unhelpful things about it, right? I want what I
Mm-hmm.
want in a certain way. I want you to factually give it to me that way. Don't give me this like bias of, okay, we can make it work, we can make it happen. It's okay. Da, 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we're using you for.
So, like, because this example is one that I find completely entertaining, right? Because if you had a cookbook, a regular book, and you went
Right.
to the book and you looked at the recipe, it would say, "This is the recipe." It would not say, "Okay, girl, don't worry about it. You'll be fine." It would say,
Right.
"This is the recipe. Either you got what you got to make the recipe or not." Now,
Exactly.
are there other creative ways that you might be able to overcome not having butter because you got heavy cream? Maybe, but I think artificial intelligence often does, try to smooth it over and make you feel good. And some of it is the humanization. I think some of it is removing any idea of judgment, which I think can be very, very persuasive and addictive
It is.
when we feel, in the environment that we're in now, where there's so much vitriol and so much ridicule and so much, social media just toxicity. You get on your AI platform and they're never saying anything mean. They're never saying, AI is never going to tell you that you're doing a horrible job and that, you've made a fool of yourself, or ask you why you didn't go grocery shopping 3 days ago if you wanted to make muffins. Nope, no, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Right. They're going
So,
to smooth it all over. They're going to try to make
yes.
it as calm as possible, and they're going
Yeah.
to feed into your needs and your ego. And I think that bias is a little dangerous. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard about people using it as a therapist, and other different things people are using it as. And just think about it: if your therapist is supposed to be an unbiased person who's supposed to give you insight and guidance and instruction and how to
And
properly
leverage their expertise and the
expertise.
context and nuance of your
Right.
situation specifically, which artificial intelligence can't do.
Now, it can do that, but you have to specifically prompt it to do so. And most people are not doing that,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
So, there are just these biases that people are not aware of that I think that's interesting that,
Mm-hmm.
that this like humanized friend that you
Mm-hmm.
have instead of just this program that you need to do a certain thing.
Yeah. I think it also, and this is my own personal observation. I think the goal is also to keep you on platform longer. I think it kind of like walks down the same path as social media, which is, stay on platform, continue to ask questions, continue to prompt. And the more I, talk to me nice, right? As long as not you're talking to me nice, I may ask another question, or I might, put in some more information that could be useful. And we all know that I want to just talk a little bit, maybe not we all know, because we don't. Talk just a little bit about the security of the information that is available. Um,
Right.
Talk about the security of the information once you share it with these large language models, especially the ones that are free, the ones that have
Yeah.
currently, a zero cost model. And
Mhm.
we'll get, you have to join us in the workshop to find out whether or not, more security comes along with these other iterations. And now there's all kinds of considerations around HIPAA and around your personal security, around your healthcare information. So, but talk to us about, is the information that people are putting in free large language models, is that secure? And
No,
if
absolutely
it's
not.
not secure, where is it going? Where could it end up?
So you are using a free service, but you're not using a free service. You are paying with your information. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You are giving the information, whether it's your date of birth, what your day to day tasking is. Maybe you're putting in your company's information, all these different things that you think are just not such a big deal. But the language model takes that information and keeps it, learns from it, and then uses it for other people. So, just for example, say you did something very trivial, such as like, I'm researching how to write a paper on, I don't know, Martin Luther King, right? and you read a book and you're like, you know what, let me put this book in here, say, based off this book, this is what I want to do. You put the ISBN number in it. It can go look up the book, or you scan a couple of pages of the book. Well, now you've just given an author's information into a language model without the author's permission. You now have been given information that can now be utilized by other people for how to write this book on Martin Luther King Jr., right? Who didn't read the book, who didn't pay the author, who didn't give any credit to the author. All these different things that people don't think about that can impact other people and other businesses just by doing something that you think is pretty simple. Like, I was just trying to make my report better, but instead you gave away proprietary information or confidential information, or just information that is copyrighted.
Intellectual property.
Yeah, to a language model without someone's permission. Mm-hmm. And now they're able to utilize that across the board in any way that they want to.
And that's how these language models grow, right? The more information we put into them, the more information they are able to gather, and the more they know about people in different regions and different classifications and generations and ages and races. And then that information gets sold, right? Or it gets repurposed in some way. So we want to, in the workshop, we're going to talk about security and how much information you should share and what makes the most sense as you're navigating using these large language models, because we want you to be able to play around. We want you to have, opportunities to leverage the tool, but we want you to do it in a way that's safe, that's in your best interest. So if someone is thinking about learning, we're going to talk about the workshop, right? We're going to go and really pivot to make sure that folks understand what it is we're trying to do. First, we got so much feedback and information from our Career Gems for the Journey community, who we absolutely love. Love you all, top tier. Mwah. But there was so much fear and trepidation, and it was causing people to feel like it was AI versus them. AI is going to take my job away, and because of that, I'm just going to be resistant to using it. Or there was this, a ton of pressure being put on people who were in the workplace to say, do your full-time job and learn how to use this tool and make sure you're staying at pace with all of this new information that's coming out really, really rapidly. So the reason why we decided to say now is the time to build this AI fundamentals workshop is people need a very easy and safe environment to get these core skills. Mm-hmm. And once you get the core skills, then you have the opportunity to continue to upskill and build upon what you've learned and to really advance your own AI understanding. And that can make you a better entrepreneur, that can make you a better employee, that can make you a better collaborator with your partners. There's all kinds of layers that this has the potential to unlock, but we knew that we had to start somewhere.
Right.
So just talk about this, the process that folks are going to go through as they are experiencing this AI fundamentals workshop that you have, built, and we're going to have instructors deliver live on our platform. Just talk a little bit about what folks are going to get out of it when they finish this workshop. What are they going to get out of it, and how do you see that as something that they'll be able to use, immediately? We really, spent a lot of time and energy saying we don't want this to be information that people put in their pocket and sit on. We want people to be able to go take action as quickly as possible. That really drove up the value proposition of the workshop. So what are people going to learn and take away?
So one of the things I want people to understand is that AI is not a trend anymore. This is now going to be a workplace skill, right? This is going to be something that when you go for your next job, they're going to be like, what tools do you use and language model tools do you use, right?
The same way we used to say Microsoft Office, right, is a skill that we had to have.
It's going to be a skill just like that, that you're going to put on your resume. We want people to be confident in using these skills. We want people to feel as though that they are safely using them. And we want people to know that, it is a co-pilot. It is a helper. It is not an autopilot to take over your job. It is not going to take over everything that you do. It is there as an intern. It is there as an assistant to help you get through your work efficiently, to help you get through, brainstorming, to help you get through iterating, getting to the next step of your process of your or whatever it is that you need to do. This is going to help you replace different things as well. Like you're not going to have to, oh shoot, sorry. You're not going to have to, rely on manual tools as much. Like I said, there are automatic note takers now. You're not going to have to be doing so much in Word documents as much anymore. You're not going to have to worry about proofreading as much anymore. You're doing marketing. There's different ways that you can use it in marketing. If you're doing it in finance, there's different ways you can use it in finance with spreadsheets. We're going to show you how to utilize all of these different ways in whatever category of work that you do, whatever your career path is. AI can help you along the way in any step.
And I think you did a fantastic job making sure that people understand this is an upskilling expectation that is coming with being employed in 2026 and beyond. This is going to continue to evolve, right? The technology is going to continue to grow, but I'm telling you that corporations do not have a definitive plan yet. Lots of them are still deciding what AI tools they're going to use, how they're going to be fully integrated into the workplace and into the requirements. So you're not too late. So we want to encourage you to take full advantage to join us for our AI Fundamentals Workshop. You can find that information on gemsforthejourney.org. That is gemsforthejourney.org. AI workshop. It's going to give you an opportunity to register for the workshop, to learn more about the context. We're going to go deeper into the things that we talked about on the podcast. It'll give you a sense of what you're going to take away, which is a fundamental understanding of artificial intelligence tools and how to prompt them. And then you'll be able to say, how do I want to apply this? Erica talked about whether you're in marketing, finance, sales, entrepreneurship, business development, operations, you name it. There is a way that you can leverage artificial intelligence tools to make your life easier, to make your day-to-day work simpler, to refine the process, or to get to your solutions faster. And we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to have the information, and then we can help you figure out what are the best ways to be able to apply it. But the only way you're going to be able to apply it is to get the foundational skills. And that's really what this workshop is for. Now, we have a foundational workshop that is already available on our website. You can go and grab that now. And then we're building upon it. There are more advanced prompting skills that we'll introduce, and we'll continue to walk down this AI journey with our community, because we want to make sure that we turn down the noise and the hype and all that may be causing stress or causing angst. And we want to make sure that you feel equipped to take an action, right? To do what's in your control, because we know that corporations are going to do what's in their control. And we know that they may still continue to make decisions on how their companies are structured and where their organization is going to go based on this technology being available. But the only way that you can have a seat at that table is to make sure that you are well informed and that you choose to develop skills in this area. And we hope you choose to do it with us, because we genuinely care and we want to make sure that you're doing it safely. And we want to make sure that we are completely aligned to this idea that human intelligence, human brilliance, with AI as a help, as a tool, can be transformational, but we don't believe that it could or should replace human intelligence. So that's our hard line, and that's what we're going to continue to stand on here at Career Gems for the Journey. So we are, thrilled for this, soft launch of our AI fundamentals workshop. And Erica, I appreciate you so much for helping to give folks the perspective on how it was built, the why behind it, and a couple of gems, right? Just wet the whistle for folks so that they can come and join us and take full advantage of the course. It's on gemsforthejourney.org. It is available now. Courses and classes will be available starting in July, so you can hop on, get your registration, knock that out of the park, and be one of the choose the first seat. It's completely virtual, and it's something that will be available in 1 to 2 hour increments, maybe even a 4 hour increment if something you want to go deeper in. But this is a live course with an instructor. So I also wanted to remind you guys of that. There might be a lot of other places that you're going that are giving you self-paced modules, maybe videos, or maybe other ways to use the tool. And that could be great. But if you're someone who benefits from having an actual instructor in front of you to be able to do demonstrations, to be able to ask questions to, that's something that we think is valuable for you, for all kinds of adult learners. So we wanted to make sure that that workshop did that for you. And I'm going to close with this because Erica knows my mom, and my mom is a delightful human. I love her down. Shout out to you, Mom. I'm sure she'll be listening to this. My mom still works full time, and she is a baby boomer. And she took a she had a performance review earlier this week, last week. And the fact that she still gets performance reviews gets on my nerves because, like, why can't you just retire and be my mom full time? Like, questions that need answers, but whatever. But whatever. And I say all that to say, as a part of her performance review, her manager told her that she has to build her AI competency skills so that she can continue to improve, right? And be a better employee. And it was just this broad, really general idea that you must learn artificial intelligence to continue to be a high performer inside of her organization. And she called me immediately and told me that. And I was like, well, Mom, I mean, you're top tier. You're probably, the best employee inside of that organization. But it doesn't change the fact that artificial intelligence is an expectation that more employers are going to continue to set. And as that expectation grows, we want you to have the right resources so that you can actually take the skill and build it into your workplace, build it into your business, build it into your life, and you can leverage AI for your own benefit. So you may be someone who is going to sit down in your performance review in the next 6 months, and you're going to get that same feedback that you need to advance your AI knowledge or you need to upskill in that area. And if you do, we want you to head over to gemsforthejourney.org so that you can register for this workshop and then come out feeling more confident about how you can use artificial intelligence and continue to ask yourself questions. How can I grow my skills so that I am more marketable, that I can grow my career, that I can grow my business, that I can make my life easier in whatever way possible. So we appreciate you for riding with us. It has been an amazing experience. I love it when I get to talk to my friends in real life on the podcast. And I have so many dope friends. So thank you, Erica, for coming out of your YouTube and all things retirement to join us on this episode of the Career Jump for the Journey podcast. It has been a blast.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.